Welcome back to another episode of the ConquerCast. I'm here with Dusty Tuckness today. This is a world champion bullfighter. I'm honored to have you here at Mountain Ops, and I'm a little giddy about this one because for those of you who don't know me, there's a song that says I should have been a cowboy, and I swear that song's about me. I'm wearing my cowboy boots today. I've just come off of some rodeo. We went to Jason Aldean, so I'm kind of in the country spirit, and then I've got a world champion bull fighter here, and I was telling Dusty that my favorite thing to watch is bull riding, and and a lot of times it's not necessarily the bull rider, because I mean those guys are nuts, they're crazy. I don't know how they do it, but they're brave, and but even more so, like I love watching the bull, and then the fighters that know how to fight these bulls, and then know how to keep these guys safe. I mean that's the whole purpose, is to make sure everyone stays safe, right?
Oh, absolutely. Long story short of what we do, our job description is cowboy protection, and basically being willing and able and doing whatever it takes to keep them bull riders safe as they can, so they can get back and down the road to the next rodeo. So it's a very unselfish job, but this is, like I said, something I've grown up around my whole life, and I truly believe it's all been part of God's plans, and there's been a lot of highs and lows and roller coasters and turns and whatnot, but that's part of life too.
A lot of getting knocked down or flipped up or
yeah, exactly.
I want to talk about all that. I want to talk about your history in it from a childhood, how this all started. I want to talk about, and you can just weave in God along the way. I mean, we don't have to have a segment that's, hey, now let's talk about God. It sounds like he's been a part of the path the whole time, and so I appreciate that and want to recognize your faith involved in the decisions you've made and the path that God's led you on. I'd love to dive into a little bit history of bullfighting and that. And maybe we I don't really get it. Were there a couple cowboys sitting around one day, and how did bull riding start? Was they like jump on that thing? I'll protect you if you get bucked off. Like who has that go through their head where they want to jump onto one of these monsters?
Yeah, so that's kind of how rodeo originated. Okay. You know, if you go back way into the history time of it, it's all ranch oriented. You know, from the timed events to the rough stock. You know, there was horses that needed broke. You know, and then they'd have some that, branches would get together and be like, well, we got a horse that, can buck off your top cowboy. Well, we got a guy that can't be throwed. And that was just kind of the development of the entertainment part of the sport of rodeo. But on the timed event side, the roping and different things like that, when you're out in a pasture and there's 1,000, 200,000 acres or whatever, you don't have pins and panels and a working chute. And that's how you doctor those animals back in the day. And it's started evolving into more of a spectator sport, and then they developed some other events along the way, and that's really how it started out more like the big steers and steer riding, and then they introduced the Brahma bull to the sport. And at the very start of it was cowboys helping cowboys. Guys would get on and then they'd help their buddy get off and try to keep them safe, and which opened up a whole nother door for, at that time it was more known as the rodeo clown. When it first originated. I
kind of made the mistake earlier of calling you a rodeo clown, and then
but that's where a lot of people can tie into what we do, and then you can kind of break it down and explain kind of the difference between the rodeo clown and the bullfighter. But how it started originally, like my dad, he was a rodeo clown and bullfighter. Okay. Now in the sport, how it's evolved, there's a lot more guys that are more focus driven to being a just strict bullfighter, or more to the rodeo clown barrelman entertainment side. Okay. And that's, I think, been pretty cool. There's a few guys that do both, but these guys are really putting in the time into their craft and developing. And rodeo as a whole, it's not just the rough and tough, cowboy way of life anymore. To be a competitor and be able to have longevity and be able to do this year round and year after year after year, you got to put a lot of time in it, from the gym to your nutrition to, even down to your sleep regimen and everything. So to be an elite rodeo competitor in any aspect or any event, there's more to it than just natural ability. Like, you got to put a lot of time, work, and effort into it.
Yeah, that's huge. I remember working with Cooper Davis years ago when he won the world championship, and I remember the year prior to us sponsoring him, he was taking Mountain Ops product, and he lost like 30 pounds. and the difference that made in his
Oh, yeah.
year and competing and winning was incredible. In fact, they announced it from the arena down there in Vegas that he had just gone through this transformation, and MTN Ops was on his vest, and they talked about the G forces that a bull rider experiences being whipped around on a bull and losing that weight, what a difference that makes in being able to control their body on top of a bull. So it is very much an athletic and fitness oriented sport where more happening within 8 seconds than you typically see in most sports, right?
Yeah, a lot happens during that 8-second whistle, but then a lot can happen after. Most professional sports, when the whistle blows, everything's stopped and they readjust and
that bull doesn't
back
stop
up.
For the whistle.
The bull doesn't stop, and there's just so many different variables. From riding bulls to riding bucking horses to fighting bulls to even the time event end. There's different malfunctions that can happen. Again, you're competing with another animal and several other aspects that are in the arena, and you kind of have a structured game plan or some fundamentals to that. This is kind of how we want it to go, but you also train and prepare yourself for those little percentages of stuff that can really go bad, but you still be able to come out on top. So there's a lot of different training and mental preparation for me anyways that I try to go through. And I got an opportunity last year to go lift, run, shoot with Cameron Haynes. And he always would say is, I want my hunt to be hard, or my training to be harder than my hunt. And that's kind of been my mentality my whole life, is I want to prepare for the worst that possibly could happen, so I'm not shocked and awe when it happens or something like that goes haywire in the arena, that I'm still in a comfortable state of mind and be able to still focus on the task at hand.
That's amazing. Yeah, your readiness and ability to respond in those moments where it matters most. It's almost just instinctive, right? For you. You've put in the work and the time to where you're
trust your training, and I've always said, what good is training if you're not going to trust it? Why put armor on and go to battle and doubt your armor? And that's the same thing of your preparation. And so I've always told everybody, I said the hard work is done when I get to the rodeo. Then I just go apply and have fun. If when I get to the rodeo, if I'm still worrying or second guessing what I'm doing, well, then I need to go rethink and restructure what I've been doing prior to that event, because it's kind of like wrestling. When you make weight, you made weight. But if you show up and you're overweight, you got other things to worry about. When like I said, I want to be fully focused and reacting on my instincts, and so I can go provide the service that they've called me to do.
Yeah, because there's guys that are trusting that you've done that, right?
Yeah.
There's so much, selflessness where you're putting in the work, and these guys are trusting. Okay, I've got Dusty here. I'm sure there's other the bullfighters that you're working with. You're usually in pairs or a threesome, right? Where have you seen the difference between some that you work with where they don't put in the work and some that do, or is everyone pretty committed to it?
No, I mean it's kind of like with any sport. There's some that are fully 100% all in, and then some that are pretty close. Then some that still just try to get by, and so yeah, you do notice those. But again, all I can really do is worry about and focus on me and preparing myself. That's one of those situations that I want to prepare for. I've been really blessed to have the run of rodeos that I have, and the other bullfighters that I get to work with. They're the best of the best, and so I don't have to worry about them. There's been times where you step in there and you're kind of by yourself, so that's part of the reason that I go back to all that training regimen and stuff that I do, that if I do end up having to cross a bridge like that I know I'm capable of doing it and still being able to do it at a high level.
That's awesome. So I understand, like the Cowboys breaking a horse and then discovering, hey, I'm gonna team you up with my horse that's not gonna be broken. You're a cowboy that's always gonna ride, and that creates this competition. And the timed events with the ropes and such. Was the bull? You're not breaking a bull. So how did that originate? Was that just a like, hey, we could stick someone on this and see how long? Okay.
Yeah, it was just another a livestock, and now the breeding and all this that it's come to. These animals are bred for this. And you can see it when they're calves and out in the pasture and they're growing up. The colts as well, they're running around, jumping, kicking, bucking, turning back and stuff like that. So they're naturally bred for this. And that's the biggest misconception that a lot of people get with the sport of rodeo is I've always said, these contractors, they have their whole life invested into this and millions of dollars invested in this. And I always say, if you had $1 million into something, you'd probably take pretty good care of it, right?
Yeah.
And most everybody agrees to that, and that's what these contractors do. This is their livelihood, and when they lose a horse or they lose a bull or that, it's like losing one of your family members, and so it's pretty cool to see that deep roots in the Western way of life and really what our country was founded on. And without the animals and different things of that, it's really hard to produce a lot of stuff that we want to do outside of the ruralness of this of the world. So there's a lot of just great people that are deeply involved with the sport of rodeo.
Yeah, I love it, and I love how patriotic and God-fearing,
patriotic. Yep.
It's our Mountain Ops audience. God-fearing, truck-driving, gun-loving. Patriotic, freedom.
America.
It's America. Yeah. Like I honestly I get a little emotional going to a rodeo, and when they kick things off, and there's the gal running around with the American or guy, but with the American flag, and we're at the Days of 47. We said the Pledge of Allegiance, and there was a prayer, and always recognizing God, asking for protection upon everyone that's there, but the riders and even the livestock, and there's just something very special about it, bringing us back to our roots and who we are and our connection to God in this country and the freedoms that we enjoy, and so I'm all about it. Like I said, I should have been a cowboy, but it's not too late, right?
Exactly.
So for you personally, you're fighting bulls. Did you have experience riding them as well, and just decided to go this direction, or kind of share with us a little bit about your experience?
So when I was young, I rode a little, but I didn't get along with it all that good. I'd much rather be in front of him than on him. Growing up as a kid, my parents were divorced at a young age. I was actually born in Idaho, and then in high school I moved over to Wyoming with my dad. But in that series of years there, I would go with Dad in the summer and rodeo with him up in Montana mostly. And when I'd come back to get ready for school and that, there was just, I had a great relationship with my mom and dad, and they were great with each other as well. But it's just, the rodeo and the stuff that I got to do, they're just, at that young of an age, I didn't understand what the pull was. I was just a kid. But
what was your dad doing in rodeo?
He competed when he was younger, but later on in his career, what he finished out with was fighting bulls and being the barrel man.
Awesome.
And so I got to go to a bunch of rodeos with him and doing that. And kind of a long story short, part of my testimony was I did that for a few years with Dad, and I come to a moment just before freshman year in high school, and as I look back now, I've realized that some of the hardest things we'll do in our life will turn out to be the best things that that end up happening in my life. And as it was getting close to time to go back to Mom's, I asked my dad what he thought if I were to move in with him, what he thought. And as a young kid, again, you're just thinking your parents are going to take care of everything. And sure enough, I thought Dad was going to make the phone call and everything was going to be, hunky-dory. And sure enough, Dad did make the phone call, but then he said, "Hey, your son has something to ask you." And my heart just hit the ground. And so anyways, I asked my mom if she would be okay if I moved in with Dad. And at that point in my life, and even now, it can kind of make me emotional about it, because if you understand a mother's love, it's almost like your son just says, "I don't want to be with you anymore." And that was a hard moment for me, but I was thankful that Mom allowed me that opportunity, allowed me to make those decisions in my life. But the biggest thing about it was, let me rewind just a little bit. I got in a pretty bad wreck before that, and it really opened my eyes of what the sport of bull fighting and rodeo could do. I was definitely way too young doing it. I was sneaking away when I was about 12 years old at some practice pens, and I got into one event that I was at Dad's, and it was a great day, but ended up having a bull get me hemmed up and get me up against the fence, knocked me out, busted my chin, broke some ribs. And I grew up with two older brothers, so you learn to be tough, and
Yeah.
I didn't know what fear or anxiety or anything was, because if you wanted to be a part of what they're doing, you had to be tough. And the first time in my life I can really remember what fear was, and what really struck me. And as I was trying to make that transition, and still wanting to be a bullfighter or whatever, I was trying to get over this hump. And Dad used to put on an event in Cody, Wyoming, and he allowed me to fight bulls with the other two guys that were working it. And I could remember the first couple bulls, like I was so scared to be in that arena. My career was over before it ever started, basically. And I ended up having to leave the arena. And
How old were you?
Like 14. And so going back now to the hardest decision turned out to be the best decision in my life, was making that decision, and Mom allowed me to make that decision. When I moved in with Dad, it allowed me the opportunity to go to a rodeo Bible camp in Meeteetse, Wyoming. Wow. And at that time, it wasn't anything to do with God that I was really going there for. It was, I want to go here and try to get over this hump and fight bulls. And again, it kept pulling me, but I didn't understand what the pull was. And real quick, within them 3 days, I realized that I went to a Bible camp that allowed me to fight bulls. And that's when I accepted Jesus into my life. And I started to understand I had purpose, I had gifts, I had somebody that loved me, that thought I was loved and highly favored, and that would walk through life with me. Doesn't matter how bad of a person that I could be. And that was really the transitioning, the changing of my whole life, but really the engagement that I had with the sport of rodeo. And as we started developing through high school and into college, he just kept putting the right people in my life. And I'm not going to say I had it all figured out or have it all figured out to this day, because, went to college and, lived the college life a little bit. And but then he just reeled me in really well and into the sport of rodeo. And some of my best friends this day, Cannon AC, Chance Smart, Bobby Welsh, and all these guys that were huge mentors in me on the spiritual side of things and the rodeo world, but as well as Ted and Linda Weesey. And there's just so many people that God kept putting in my life to help keep me on track and being focused on what needed to be focused on. And started our career and started going. And down the road, my mom and my stepdad at the time, who basically helped raise a lot of me and my brothers, they ended up getting a divorce, and it hurt us pretty bad. Because you don't want to see anybody go through pain like that, especially your own mom. And the me looking back and seeing what God has done through this all, one of the hardest things that I had to do in life turned into not only being the best thing for my life, but through that next part of Mom going through this, and me and my brothers there loving her and supporting her and everything, my mom gave her life to God. And so you look back and you question at times, like, is it the right place where you're at? Or, I don't necessarily really do the why God thing anymore. It's just like, well, what are you trying to show me? And give me the eyes to see and the heart to feel and the ears to hear. And seeing what he's done through all this into my life has been pretty cool. So anybody listening, that if you're going through a hard season in life, know that there's a purpose for it. Jesus told his disciples to get into the boat and go to the other side. He spoke going to the other side into existence. Now, he didn't say that the waters weren't going to be rough and there might be some challenges, but he said you would get to the other side. And that's one thing I think about a lot is, the trials and errors that life alone gives you, but in the sport of rodeo gives me, until I feel God's calling me somewhere else, I'm going to keep enduring and keep putting my best foot forward into this and trying to be that light too, and having I struggle with it for a long time because I'm not big on the spotlight. I'm not big on, the fame or anything. I just want to go my deal and go do my deal and, then go hide out basically. But one of my pastor friends, Tim Stewin, he told me years ago, he said, God is giving us this platform and, utilize it the right way, and then you're not going to be bragging on yourself. And so I really took that and all right, God's going to put me in several places, and as long as I can keep giving him the credit and glory, then I'm honoring it right and what he's called me to be. And that's where I really try to keep plugged into and balance out my why, you know, physically and spiritually. And if those things are balanced and I feel that I'm going in the right direction, now can I always learn and be better? Yes. But that's the cool thing about reading God's word is he's going to tell you something new every day the more you read it. And a lot of things it's how or what something's going on in your life at the moment, and you can really soak in like a sponge, or you might read something that morning and somebody walks by and says something, and you know, so there's just been too many signs and stuff that God just keeps showing up. So like I said, this is just such a blissful life, and I wouldn't trade it for a thing.
That's awesome, man. I love it. I love it so much, and I love the scripture, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and
absolutely
glorify your Father which is in heaven, right? I like the advice that your friend gave you and the platform you're utilizing to reflect the light and love of Jesus Christ to those that are following along and watching you. And it's you know, you're a tough guy doing a tough guy thing, and yet you're humble enough to say, look, I'm a tough guy, I'm facing these bulls, but I have the strength of Jesus Christ to help me do that. Just go back to, so you were 14 years old and you had that experience, and you're now experiencing fear for the first time, and so you're in the arena not wanting to face those bulls again. And so was that a conscious effort from you? Like, did your dad know there's this rodeo Bible camp that potentially could help you with this, or was it you?
No, it was, so Dad is from Matitsi, and that's where the camp was.
Okay.
And one of my buddies, Ken and Ace, still one of my best friends to this day. He was going to ride. I guess it was like steers junior bulls. We were pretty young, and I was like, yeah, I want to go, like rodeo. Heck yeah, call my name, and here I am. And like I said, I went in with a totally different mindset than I left with.
Okay.
But it was all part of God's plan.
Yeah.
And even though he might have had something earlier on for me that I missed, you know, that's that grace that God gives us in our life, that, you know, not that you can just keep messing up and keep using the world as a crutch, but there's got to be a transition and a change in your life. And it's not just what you know up here, but it's in your heart. And I was watching a sermon reel this morning, and a preacher was up on the stage, and he said, what's the furthest distance in this room? He said, is it door to door? Is it from the ceiling to the floor? Is it from wall to wall? And he pulls out a tape measure, and he says 12 to 14 inches. And he said, from your mind to your heart. And so that's the furthest distance in this room. And it spoke a lot to me this morning. Is like, it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have of the Bible, but if it's not a genuine heart feel, then you know, he says, you know, depart from me, I never knew you. And so I can sit here and tell you all about fighting bulls too, everything you need to know and how to do it. But if my actions aren't showing that, then I'm just talking the talk, not walking the walk. So be true to who you are. And another thing Tim told me years ago was, you go out and preach the gospel, and if necessarily, use tongue.
Yeah, I love that.
You know, and it's like, be who you are, be true to who you are, and your actions are going to tell. If you're around somebody long enough, you end up seeing their true colors, good or bad. And that's what I really try to just focus on is, all right, God, I'm here for a reason, whether it's the valley or the mountaintop, and how can I be used? And, you know, forgive me when I do fall short, but, you know, definitely make that conscious and good effort each and every day to be the best version that I'm called to be.
That's awesome. And it's such a powerful thing to learn at the age of 14, to go and kind of recognize that God could be the source of helping you overcome fear. And I love that you're bringing that up, and this, you know, this challenge to the listener to include God, or reach out to God, or find that strength, because this is the Conquer Cast, and we want to equip our listeners with ways to conquer more in life. And sometimes it's conquering fears, sometimes it's conquering a mountain, sometimes it's, you know, you're going through your family's going through a divorce, or there's sickness involved, and I'm sure there's been plenty of injury involved in your line of work.
Oh yeah.
Or, you know, you're facing a giant bull, and it's like, how do you overcome those types of fears with faith? And if that distance between the head to the heart is the longest, like, you've got to have something that bridges that gap, you know. And it's Jesus Christ can connect them, bring them into one, right? Where and I love that you asked for the eyes to see, the heart to feel, the ears to hear, the mind to think differently. I mean, those are things that allow us to gain perspective in life and apply it into our life that will be for the benefit of others and the benefit of our own connection with God. So incredible story, man. I love hearing it. So you have that experience, you get back into it, you go through high school. Are you 14 years old? It's pretty young to be in the arena doing bullfight. Was that allowed or?
No, I mean, like I said, growing up around it, there's a few guys that I know that started really young, and most of them had similar background to me, that we were, grew up around rodeo and whether that was fighting bulls or they rode or whatever, but it wasn't like I was busy all the time. Right. But I did definitely start a little too soon in a sense. And now, like I said, back then they had some schools and stuff, but it was kind of the schools of hard knocks. It'd be like, all right, get out there and I'll tell you what not to do, or they'll tell you what you can do and not do. Where now, the evolution of the sport, just like all sports across the board, we can develop kids or teens or young adults where they're at, meet them where they're at. If they have no experience to a little experience to a lot of experience, and different ways we can bring them up around different size cattle, different advanced animals, and there's other training regimens that we do, and then also the film sessions and different things like that, all play into factor. And I guess the one difference, and there's similarities to all the other sports, once it's game time, there's some of that similar feeling, but in the sport of rodeo, when you're going against an animal that outweighs you by 10 times, you've got to really trust your training, and because what you do in the fundamentals of working the dummy and the film sessions and the footwork and all that stuff, we do that for a reason. Because we apply that. Now it can be, might have to be a little faster or slower, depending on the situation at hand, but there's a reason behind the training. And
when you say training, obviously there's training in the gym, and I know you do a lot of CrossFit and that type of thing to be physically fit for this, but there's also, are you training with, like, you're at a little arena with your friends and a bull rider gets on and you train that way, or you just get in a ring with the bull and kind of dance with them a little bit? How do you
so there's some of that, like we still pop up practice pins at times where guys, they're bucking some younger bulls or gonna buck a set of bulls, and guys get on and then you actually are working live cattle. But at them schools, there's a lot of different, if they have some or no experience type thing, determines on what cattle they get on as a bull rider, as well as we have a group of guys, say I got 10 bullfighters, and depending on what this animal is capable of doing or a little bit of his history, if he's more aggressive or whatever, I'll shuffle some guys around, probably give the more experienced guys those type of animals. But we've got what it's called a bullfighting dummy. And just to kind of describe it a little bit, like a wheelbarrow, a bull moves a lot like a wheelbarrow. In order for the front end of that wheelbarrow to go a direction, that back end has to meet it. So that's where our basic foundation move is called a circle. You can't outrun a bull. They got 4 legs, we got 2 legs. So you outmaneuver them basically. And when you make a circle, it's just like pushing that wheelbarrow for that front to go where it wants. That back end has to come around, so it creates a little bit of a pocket right there in that inside of that shoulder. And that's how you outmaneuver that animal. Now, some can be faster than others, and you learn over time of judging your distance, as well as the engagement that you can have with that animal. But at the end of the day, I tell a lot of guys, if they want to know about how to get involved in it, I said, go get to a good school. There's myself, Cody Webster, Frank Newsom, Nathan Harp. There's several of these guys that put on legit schools that are going to bring you up the right way. Because at the end of the day, within them 3 days, now you're not going to have it all figured out in 3 days. I started fighting bulls when I was 12, and I didn't get my professional card until I was 19. Okay. And but your mind is going to tell you pretty dang quick if this is something you want to do when you get a bull running at you or you get run over for the first time. So that's kind of why we approach these schools like that. And I've had students that really excel and go on to do a lot of great things, but then I've had students that after the first day, they've come up and said, man, found out this isn't for me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Or there's no shame in you. There's no that's part of why you go to a school or try to further your education and whatever it is in life is. You may get deep into something and like, no, this isn't for me. Well, that's kind of why you do that. You don't just jump into a job position and take it and then get over your head and get overwhelmed and stressed out or anything. Same way with the sport of rodeo. You're best to get brought up the right way through the right fundamentals.
It feels like you feel like you're kind of called to do this in a way. What was that through that process of kind of connecting with God?
Yeah. I think it all comes back to that. I'm a firm believer in, we've all been called for a purpose, and everybody's could be a little different, or the adversities or the challenges or whatever they go through in life is a little different, but it's up to us too God's got the plan, but it's up to us to, work for it and kind of be open-minded about it. And like I said, ask for the wisdom to see and hear and feel and be aware. There's a lot of little things that I think we're given throughout the day that we can get wrapped up in the world a lot and kind of bypass some of the things that we need to embrace in those moments. But yeah, everything, it just seemed like it always, like I said, we grew up in a sports family, an outdoors family, hunting, fishing, hiking, football, basketball, wrestling, track, everything. But rodeo just always, I was actually supposed to go to college for football.
Really?
And my recruiting coach, they found out that I rodeoed and fought bulls, and they set me up in block scheduling where I do one class for like a month and then the next class and the next class. And I mean, they took care of all of it, and they come up to me, I think it was a couple weeks before camp, and they're like, well, we know what you do or have done, and basically if you get caught doing it, we'll pull your scholarship. And so that was, at the end of the day, I ended up saying I appreciate it and went the rodeo route. And but yeah, just everything just always kept pulling back to rodeo and fighting bulls and the people really that what God kept putting into my life, and I'm sure if I would have went some other direction, he'd have rolled his eyes at me and made had a plan B. But for me, it just kept coming to fortune, and ultimately the rodeo is what drew me to that camp, but God ultimately took the upper hand out of it, and to me that was like, well, there's a reason that I went here and it was for that. But
awesome.
Now as the career has developed and been able to do what I've done for a pretty good while, he's wrote it out. I'm just trying to abide by it.
Yeah, I love it, man. You just let God prevail in your life. I love it. What so at 19 you get your pro card,
PRCA
card, and what does that take? Is that tell us what that process is like, and then does that that's where you kind of make it a career, or is it building up the career to then become that, and then you get better events, or how does that work?
So to get evaluated, it's changed a little bit since I've got my card to now, but it's pretty similar. So basically you've got to get letters of recommendation, at least 3 letters of recommendation from a previous NFR bullfighter, an NFR barrelman, NFR freestyle guy. There's a couple other different categories, but you got to get a letter. Once you send the letter in, you have to have 5 non-pro events. At one of those events, they'll have an evaluator come and evaluate you if you meet criteria. And then at that point, if you get approved, you're approved for a permit. And then you could fill your permit in a year, you could fill it in half a year, you could fill it in 2 years or whatever, but then you have to, for your first 5 pro events, the announcer, the barrelman, the other bullfighter, I believe the contractor, maybe even the committee, they get now it's via email, but an evaluation form. And the criteria at that point, if you made it to that point, you should pass this with flying colors. And once you fill those 5 rodeos and those ballots are mailed in, you'll receive another letter telling you if you are a full card carrying member. And then again, just a lot of guys think as soon as you get your card, I mean, you're not going to see a off day or an off weekend and you're just going to have such a busy schedule. And that's not how it goes. I mean, there's a lot of investment you put into it, whether it's going to schools, whether it's kind of cutting your teeth and driving across country and not making a lot of money. But how I always looked at that was it was an investment that I'm putting into a product that I believe in. And I'm not going to accept anything less than being the best person I can be. And again, very blessed with opportunities that was presented to me, and I try to capitalize on them, but continue to just put in the work and stay ready, so you don't have to get ready type mentality.
Yeah.
So, and you run into guys that are like that, and you run into guys that you might call and say, I don't know if I can. I'm not ready. Well, that's on you. And it's such an independent sport. Independent contractor is what I am. So I take care of my finances. I take care of my travel, my driving, my flights, my meals. A lot of my contracts and stuff now. If I don't pull my fifth wheel trailer with me, put me up in a hotel room, and then there's how you bid rodeos on, to where you can, a lot of people say, oh, that's fun, but you can't make a living. Well, I know several people that make a great living. You talked about Cooper Davis earlier. Yeah. He was world champion, won $1 million that year on top of what he won in the regular season, and now he's in, with the Carolina Cowboys, and in the state of Utah that we're at, the greatest bareback rider of all time, Casey Fields, just down the road, and he puts in the time and the work and the effort, and it's, you look at, just even my place, everything that I've got, it's the rodeo's given me, and awesome. So it's what you put in is what you'll get out.
I agree. That's amazing, man. That's so awesome. And then, so you get your pro card, and then you've got these amazing opportunities that obviously you have to work for, and you're running a business. You're an entrepreneur. You're a business owner. You're refining and you're dedicating everything to this craft and this talent and gift that God's kind of pointed you down. How do you become a world champion? Like, how does that title come about?
Yeah, so it goes in just a reflection. I think what people put in, and it takes time, and sometimes it's you're in the right spot at the right time, to get an opportunity to work an event, or on the other side, and we can dive in that a little later too. But there's a freestyle side of it, where it's a man versus a Mexican fighting bull, a Spanish bred fighting bull. But on the cowboy protection side, it's a lot of word of mouth. You get out there and do your good job or whatever, and people start seeing you, and now it's pretty easy to get information out there with all the social media and all the different TV opportunities, and then you just kind of start building your brand. And one of my mentors, Daryl Diefenbach, he went to the NFR 12 times, Hall of Famer. My first year to the NFR, he told me, he said, Tuck, he said, keep your nose to the ground and fight bulls. He said, as good as you fight bulls, let that speak for itself. You don't have to tell people about how good you are, just show them. And I've kept a hold of that, and like I said, the word gets around, and then how these committees, like I'm going to Preston, Idaho this weekend, and then Loveland, Colorado, then back to Logan, Utah. They reach out to you, hey, are you available? We'd like to, bring you in, and then you start talking pricing, budgeting, and if it works in your schedule, then you start putting your schedule together, and over the years, you start adding more, and then getting the opportunity to go to some bigger events, the big buildings in the winter, Fort Worth, Houston, and then the summer runs. We just got done with Shine Frontier Days. We go to Ellensburg, Pendleton, Reno, Nevada, Cody, Wyoming, and we get to go to all these. Every town's big week, So everywhere we go, it's a party.
Is there a favorite of yours that you've done? That's
tough. Just due to the fact I think there's such a uniqueness about rodeo, in each rodeo you go to. Some are indoor, some are outdoor, some are big arenas, some are small towns, some are big towns. And so I think every one that I get to go to is something special and unique. I mean, obviously, I've bragged a lot on Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo. Mr. Brad Barnes brought me in 2009, and their format has changed over the years, but it was a rodeo that I really feel helped define me and create me into the bullfighter I am to this day. It was 34 performances in 20 days. So you did a lot of 2 and 3 performances in one day. So you'd be in a lot of cattle. So if you get beat up,
and a performance is
a rodeo.
And so how many bulls are you fighting?
Usually we were between like 13 and 15 a perf.
A performance, and you're doing 2 or 3 of those a day for
for basically 3 weeks. But then you go to your big outdoor rodeos. Cheyenne is one of my favorite, being from Wyoming, and then you go to the grass in Pendleton, and then you go to the big kickoff to the summer run in Reno, Nevada, and I mean there's just so many great. Then you go to NRG in Houston, where it seats almost 90,000, and you're in a huge 3-acre arena, and so you get to experience so many cool events and how their production is, and the people amongst themselves. Like, that's the other cool thing with rodeo. The committees themselves, there's a few paid positions in some of these, especially those big events, but 90% of them are volunteers.
Yeah.
So they're donating their time, and so they've got a lot of passion for it. And you know, once you get to town, they're, hey, how can we help you? You need a home cooked meal, or need a place to stay, or you know, you end up being lifelong friends with a lot of these people throughout the years. And so that's one question we get all the time. You miss home. There's parts and times that I do miss just being myself at the house, and you know, going out in the woods and hunting, but I get to see my family and friends all the time, every week, you know. So everybody I saw in Cheyenne a couple days ago, I'm going to see in Preston.
That's fun.
And then we're going to see him in Loveland, and then we're going to see him in Logan. And so you just, everybody drives their own rig, but meets up the same spot.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have actual like blood family that is in the same tour as you, kind of traveling?
Yeah. Not going as hard as I am now. Like I said, Dad just retired last year, and my mom, and she bounces around to several rodeos now just to come and watch and be a fan. And my brother Will and his boy, they were in Cheyenne the other day. So that's the other cool thing. You know, I've got just such a great support system with, you know, my blood family that you know, try to keep up with me or watch it on the Cowboy Channel. But then I've got my extended rodeo family that we do a lot of life together, and in some cases I spend more time with them, and so you see the highs, you see the lows, you see the heartaches, and you see the victories, and so you just tend to get so close to these guys. And you know, there's a family, there's actually a group of them, but you know, John and Carla Harrison, you know, down in Oklahoma, he's a rodeo clown. He was actually just here in Ogden, but we've done so much life together, and I've basically seen their kids grow up. So, you know, I'm Uncle Tuck to them.
That's cool.
And so that's pretty cool. And, you know, Nate and Bridget with their little girls, and G and Neely, and they're just such a great group of people that you get to do life with. And again, you know, we go to everybody's big event. And so if you show up and you're sour, then it's on you, because everybody else is excited because of the events in town.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome, man. It's a dangerous career to to go about, right? And a dangerous sport. Injuries that you've sustained, like what's been kind of a scary moment? You know, I know you had the one when you're 12 years old and it's getting you pinned. I mean, anything can happen at any time. What injuries have you had, or what's been a scary moment?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said it's like playing with fire. You do it long enough, you're gonna get burnt.
Yeah.
And so I've sustained some injuries over the year. I still feel that I've been pretty blessed on the injury side of things with what I've done and experienced and went through. I've had some handful of different surgeries. I think the biggest one that I would say, you know, put a standstill to my career for a little bit, and you know, gave, you know, a lot of people questioning on if, can he overcome this? Can he come back? And will he be the same guy if he comes back? In 2021, in the 9th round at the NFR in Las Vegas, had a bull spin around there after the whistle. It threw the kid off, and when he did, he swung around there to kind of hook at me in that. And when he did, he reached out with his front feet, and he stepped on the side of my leg, causing a compound fracture of my tib fibula. And it was one of them injuries right away. Not only I knew something was really bad, but everybody in that Thompson Mac knew. You know, there's a lot of times you can get hurt or whatever, and people might be like, I think it's a knee, or it might be their shoulder or their elbow or their hand. But physically, you could see that something was wrong when my leg was laid over on its side that it wasn't supposed to be. And obviously, when I looked down, I knew it was bad. And I could just remember laying back in the dirt in that moment, and the only thing that I could muscle up and say was just Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And laid there. You know, the Justice Sports Medicine program is kind of our traveling sports medicine team that travels to basically all our major rodeos, as well as doctors and staffing of that region that come in and help and have a good history on all this. But anyways, they got me put on the board, and they were packing me out. And
did the bull leave you? It stomped on you and then left you alone?
Or? Well, so yeah, I was working with Nathan Harp and Cody Webster, and as soon as it happened, like, I didn't really have any worries about the bull. I knew those guys would take care of it and get that bull out of the arena, and they did. And then, you know, right away, you know, they tended to me. And when they were packing me out, I could just remember kind of gazing around the crowd, and I just I just told myself I wasn't going to let this determine the last time that I'd be in this arena. And, so normally after the finals, I'd come up to Mom's, and it's the holidays, and you kind of get off the health kick and enjoy, the foods and that. And immediately I just stayed true to my nutrition and my diet, and I quit anything that had what I felt could have any effects on me physically, to allow my body to try to get it healthy and healed like it's supposed to. And as we get about a month into that, I noticed there's some movement in my leg, and it didn't hurt, but I just didn't feel like that was right. So I reached out to my doctors, and we set up an earlier doctor visit than I was attended to. We get there, and when the doctor come in, I could tell he wasn't going to tell me good news right away, and he just looked at me and said, "We got to redo it. The bone is moving.
Wow.
The rod that they put in there originally was a little small. It wasn't lined up as good, so they wanted to go back in there and put a bigger rod, more supporting screws, and line it up better." And it hit me hard, especially when I thought I was a month into it. And from the day it happened, to that point, I was like, I'm going to be back quicker than they expect or they think. I know God, this is part of God's plan.
Yeah.
It's not always going to look like we want it to at times, but just trying to have that right mentality about it. But it really broke my heart when I was there with that doctor, and luckily I had I call him my Uncle Buckles, Cole. He's extended rodeo family, but he was with me, and it was a blessing to have him there with me, because he's very optimistic, very good energy, and he helped lighten the mood a little bit. But I was pretty sour on the drive home, and as I'm sitting back there, and he always, when he tells a story, he's like, "Yeah, you were not happy," and I wasn't. But we get down the road a few hours, and then I just thought of one of my mentors, Rex Dunn. He used to tell me all the time. He said, "Life's trials and tribulations are like a flat tire. You can get out, kick dirt, and throw your sucker in the rocks, or you can just get out and fix it and move on." And as soon as I thought of that, it was like he spoke to me. And so I got on the phone with my doctors, and then I got with the family doc. And the next morning, I had another doctor visit, and we got a game plan for another surgery. As I figured, the longer I wait, the longer it's going to take for me to get back. And so within the next 6 days, I had the surgery redone and started all over kind of deal. And as I was starting into that part of it, I got to thinking, and I was like, if I'm going to put all this time and focus and dedication on my physical side, I need to do that, if not more, with my physical and spiritual side. Wow. So I was never been a reader other than devotions and my Bible and stuff like that. And so I dove more into that, but then I started diving into, hardships to, overcoming books. And the first one I think I read is from a military guy's How to Make Your Bed, basically starting with the small stuff. And then I come across Goggins, and I read Goggins' book, and then I come across Cameron and read Cameron's book. And those two they're two of the hardest working human beings. I've never been with Goggins, I've been with Cameron now, and I think everybody has got what they got, but they were just willing to put in that type of work and effort to get it. So I just drew to them too, and really started diving into their mentality and their work ethics and everything, and just really tried to sharpen my mind. And then I listened to a podcast from Tony Robbins, was talking to Shaun White about, all Shaun had for a long time was success. And then he had the adversity and got busted up, and then now he's coming back to the sport. And one thing that he said that he told myself is, I kept telling myself the sport didn't change, so I'm not going to allow it to change my mind. And I was like, that's the same way. Rodeo is still rodeo, and my job is still my job. I'm not going to step back in the arena and think otherwise. I know what I'm capable of, and I know what I can do, but it's going to take a long road to recover, and I got to put in the time, work, and effort. And thankfully I had some close, he's more like family now, but Kevin Taylor's his physical sports PT clinic just north of me in Oklahoma City. We hit the ground running when we could, and we did a lot of hours on the zero gravity treadmill and different things. And thankful that he was in my corner, and they were ruling me out. Probably they said 6 to 12 months, and I come back in 4.5 months.
Wow, that's incredible. Because you're out. Are you getting paid when you're in the arena, or does that
so that's the other thing is when we're sidelined, you're not getting paid. Yeah. You get paid to show up and do your deal, and that's the other cool thing with rodeo is when people are down, and they have different groups like the Justice Sports Crisis Fund and Western Sports Foundation that, raise money throughout the year to help injured athletes and Cowboys to
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, but I was grateful and thankful for a lot of my endorsements and my sponsors.
Yeah.
They said, no, you're part of the family. We're going to continue to pay you. And even some of my rodeos, they helped out when needed. And so it's all a give and take in the sport of rodeo. You always have somebody helping you out, but when it's your turn to do the same, you need to do it. And so I was grateful and thankful I didn't have to worry about anything through that other than just getting right and ready. And so the sport team and the system that I had helping me with my physical therapy to my training and everything, they spent a lot of hours with me, and they probably got aggravated at me at times, but we made it back, and it's been pretty cool.
That's what it takes to be a professional athlete like you. I mean, you got to put in the time, the work, the effort that others aren't willing to, even if there's pain involved, right? And especially to come back from something like that. You mentioned earlier there's the bullfighting to protect the rider, and then you said there was like just you and the bull.
Yeah, the freestyle.
The freestyle. You've done that as well?
Yeah.
Do you still do that?
No, I don't really. I haven't entered a competition for a long time.
Is that when like the ones you've seen where they're running and they do a flip over them and stuff like that?
A lot of that. Yeah. So basically, it's a Spanish bred fight bull. They're naturally bred aggressively. And it's similar to the Spanish bullfighting, but we don't have the capes and we don't have the swords in that. But it's judged the same way as a rough stock event: 1 to 25 for the bull, 1 to 25 for the bullfighter, with 2 judges, possible of 100 points. And it's kind of a game of cat and mouse. How it's judged on different criteria and whatnot. But yeah, basically controlling the animal and kind of making them do what you want to do. And then you're judged and scored on that, and it's in a competition.
Scored on performance as well, as far as like creativity or whatnot.
Yeah, a lot of it. So like your engagement, your willingness to get close. Are you in control of the animal? That's more so on like the bullfighter side. Now on the bull side is how aggressive is he? How difficult is he to handle? And are you handling him? And that's where you break it down and get your score. And a lot of those are bracketed into 3-round brackets, so you're going against 2 other guys, and then usually the winner of the bracket will make it to the short round, and then you compete against all the other winners in the other previous rounds to determine your champion for that event. But
is there a lot of injury in that as well?
There can be. I mean, the biggest thing for it is not to get hooked. That's the biggest thing you don't want to do in a freestyle match. Now it does happen. Just putting yourself out there and the risk you're willing to take. But the whole concept of it is just basically controlling the situation and being smooth and productive, to where on the cowboy protection side of it, there is not that you just go out there and be a wild banshee and just get run over all the time, but there's moments in protection that in order to keep that bull rider safe, somebody's got to take a shot. And for me, if I'm in that arena, then it's supposed to be me, and that's what I try to pride myself on.
And then you mentioned something about a barrel fight. Is that barrel fighter or
barrel man?
Barrel man, is that the guy that jumps in the barrel?
Yeah, that's the guy that's in the barrel. Yep.
And so is he one of the 3 guys that's out there?
He would be like our description and our criteria is cowboy protection. Just keep it simple. Where the barrel man, entertainer, they tell the jokes and fill in the lows in the rodeo, but also during the bull riding, they serve a very good purpose as well when they're in that barrel. For example, we was in Cheyenne over the last 2 weeks, and it's a really big arena. Well, Cody Sosby, he'd be in the barrel, but there's handles in that barrel. We can pick it up and walk around like a turtle in a shell. And so if a bull rider gets bucked off high side as we're working that bull and trying to direct him away from the bull rider, that bull rider's got kind of an island of safety that he can go to, and Cody could pick that barrel up and meet him and kind of give him a little protection out there if needs to be, or in a case where we got a bull locked on ourselves, if I can see him there out in the deep water, we call it, out in the middle of the arena, then I'll probably veer over to him and allow that bull to kind of rub off on them, and then I can either work him on that barrel, or that bull will just fly it out from there.
Okay. I always thought it was just for entertainment purposes, and he's going to
No,
get in there and get.
and it
the
is.
crowd wants
Yeah,
to see that.
the crowd
right?
does like to see that.
They don't always do it,
Mhm.
right? Is that just the choice of the entertainer?
Yeah, depending. Some guys like getting the barrel. Some guys get in a little bit. Some guys don't get in it at all. But that's kind of the purpose for it. Is, the marinas are big,
awesome.
and provides a little island of safety.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's really cool. Now, there's moments where these riders are in they're hung up. They're tied in. They get pretty tight in there, right? And sometimes it looks like they just come right off, and sometimes is that just like the knots not coming undone, or?
So it's just a flat braided rope, and when they cross the tail over, they'll wrap it behind their hand. And there's 2 different styles of rope. There's a Brazilian style that pulls backwards, basically, where you take the tail from here and come from the palm to your thumb, or the American that comes from your thumb to your palm. And depending on how that's tied, but there's a block in that rope, and when they set their hand in that rope, their hand's up against that block. So when they take that wrap and pull it through, and they buck off away from their hand, and sometimes in, but usually away from their hand, it rolls their hand over and it kind of binds it shut because against that block. And they also use rosin that gets the rope sticky. And so a lot of times, if they hang up in a Brazilian rope, is naturally you're quote unquote really not supposed to hang up into it, because that's the big part of the handle. But with the rosin, that can be gummed up enough to where their hand may be open, but it's kind of like trying to rub 2 pieces of gum together, and they're going to stick until you break the outside of the gum strip. Same kind of thing with their rosin strip on their rope. That's where you get seeing some guys hang for a bit, but then, like I said, there is times where it does basically close their hand, and so it's up to us to get on. Ideally, is on the opposite side of the bull rider. That way, we're not, if he's on his feet, we're not knocking him down. But then that's the way that you need to pull the tail to where you can pop that bind to free their hand.
And are you ever going in with a razor blade to cut the rope?
In a situation like that, no. Now, if they hang a spur in the tail of the rope or the flank in that's when you do see at times that we do pack. It's kind of what it was a seatbelt safety knife, but you don't see them made anymore. So I've got some guys that are in the works of developing the knife for bullfighting and protection like that, where it's a hook knife where you can't cut yourself, but basically you put it on the tension of that rope, and just basically a little tap of it will cut that. Wow. And that'll bind or basically cut that piece of the tail or the flank out to where they can get free, because the hang-ups can be bad for sure with their hand, but it gets real scary when they're hung by a spur, because a lot of times they're dragging behind the bull, and when that bull's kicking up, that's when you can really get hurt.
And it's just getting their spurs getting stuck on the rope.
Yeah,
as well?
Just their shank or their rowel gets run through that cotton part of the flank or the grass rope or whatever, and something's got to give, and sometimes you tear it out, but it's quicker and safer usually if you can get your knife out, pop that tension, and it just breaks. Now, granted, you cut a flank or a rope, but your leg and your life is a little more valuable than a piece of rope.
I mean, one of the worst that I saw, I can't remember if it was the NFR or if it was the PBR. I think it was the PBR, but the rider, now most of them have helmets, isn't there? Like there was a rule at some point, if you're a certain age, you have to wear helmets, and then but I mean, I saw one guy's head just collide with the bull. The bull was coming up, he was going down, and it was just like a rag doll onto the. Do you see that often?
Yeah, you see it. I mean, not a lot, but you see it. Your fair share. Just like I said, one's coming up, one's going down. The centrifugal force of it, and the power of the G-force. If they're not counter balancing, the movements, and that's where you do see a lot of guys, wearing a helmet. And that's kind of why. The PBR is implemented. If you were born after a certain date, that it's mandatory. Now, if you're before that date, then you're kind of grandfathered in. To where PRCA doesn't have a rule that you have to, but you see a lot of people that are, especially the younger guys that have started out doing it. You still got some guys that have that, cowboy mentality and just go hat down and whatnot. But the helmets have definitely saved a lot of a lot of injuries for sure.
What about you guys? Do you wear helmets or is
No, there's some guys that have in the past, and that was a lot due to injuries or some stuff that they sustained or some reason that they needed to wear one. I never have. I come close to it one year. I busted my face before the NFR, and I wasn't quite sure if I was going to be healed up enough before it, but thankfully, it healed up pretty good, and didn't have to. But no, we pretty much hat down the whole time.
I saw one of your Instagram reels, and you're behind the barrel. It's flipped on its side, and you just like take your cowboy hat off and put it right on the. I mean, when you're sitting there inches from a bull like that, is that just excitement and adrenaline for you, or is like, does that fear from your childhood ever kind of come back into play?
Man, honestly, I'm pretty comfortable out there, and outside perspective, a lot of people look at it like we're crazy, but at the end of the day, crazy people aren't good at anything. And so it's we're trained, we've done this a lot, and everybody's a little different, but for me, it's we have a lot of fun with it. And moments like that, you're laughing, you're joking, and you're honestly pretty calm.
That's awesome.
Adrenaline kicks in naturally at times, but for the most part, I got a pretty good peace about me out there, and that helps me to be able to do my job at a high level. Is if I'm, my heart's racing and I'm just overwhelmed with adrenaline, it's really hard to focus with the task at hand. And so to be able to be level-headed, and that reflects back to my training and my preparation mentally, physically, and spiritually, is, I do all that stuff for a reason, not to, look at me, I'm doing this workout or I'm whatever. There's a purpose behind my training, and to stay ready, for whatever happens in that arena. There's days you might work 10 bulls, or days you might have to work 60 bulls. There's days you might get wrecked out on the first bull and still have 40 bulls to go. And there's just so many different variables and stuff that can happen in that instance. Or, you get beat up, it's the first perf and it's 30 perfs like Fort Worth used to be. Well, you're not going to be as healthy going through the rest of it, but that's why all that training is, what you're capable of doing and pushing through and still do your job at a high level. So it all ties together for me.
What's the biggest, baddest bull that was like, that was a fun one to?
And
because there's some. I mean, I remember hearing there's Mickey Mouse, and there was all these names of bulls. That,
it's probably different for riders to bullfighters, like on the protection side. I mean, there's definitely, as a rider, there's several bulls that they did like getting on, and then there's several that they didn't like. For us, at the end of the day, it really just comes down to, willingness to step in there between the bull and the bull rider. And some make it a little more challenging and tricky. They might be, big high horn bulls that, you don't have the space to work with as you might have on a littler bull with small horns or no horns. But again, the foundation and the fundamentals of it all are the same. Now, it's like I said, it can get a little more intense with certain bulls, but I'm not going to handle a big horn bull any different than I would a muley. You got to have that same mentality and believe in yourself to what you're out there for. Like, I always tell myself before I step in the arena, I only get this opportunity one time, and how do I want to remember it? And I want to remember it as doing my job at the high level and taking care of these guys. And there's times that it works great, and there's times that I walk out there like, all right, I could have done better. But I always also feel that I can be better too. I want to be coachable. I want to learn. I want to grow, and I don't ever want to feel like I got it all figured out. So I think when you do that, then I think you get a little more prideful about yourself and then what you're actually supposed to do. I enjoy it and I love what I do, but I want to take care of the guys. It doesn't matter if you're Sage Kimsey, Stetson Wright, Kai Hamilton, or any of them world champions, or first guy rookie. Like, I'm going to give you the same effort as I do those guys, and that's just a mentality I got to have.
It's pretty incredible that your job is to protect them, and so you're willing to put your body out there, your life out there on the line to make sure they're protected. So
it's quite the life, right?
It's amazing. I mean, not everyone could do it, but I appreciate it, and I just commend you for it. It's awesome. So, earlier we kind of talked a little bit about how we talked about hunting a little bit, and you were correlating the two, the hunt and the bullfighting. Like, share with that those kind of some of those thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, like we've talked earlier, and I've talked with other people that are either hunters, and I'm telling them about rodeo and hunters. But there's so many of my friends that we do both, and the hunting world and rodeo world is there's a lot of similarities and a lot of the same people. But I was just explaining, like, when you're out there hunting and trying to set up on, call a bull in, or trying to figure out a game plan, or working your wind, or you're kind of guessing a little bit, but predicting where that animal is going to give you the best shot possible to where you can make a good harvest. A lot of it's similar to fighting bulls. It's reaction, into the situation that you're given. And it might go as kind of planned. You're not really planning, but kind of go as what you're thinking. But then something could totally change, but you react off your instincts instead of your thinking. I've always said, if you think about it, you're going to be a second late in fighting bulls, because you've got, from the time the guy nods ahead to when the bull leaves the arena, it's probably anywhere from 30 seconds to a couple minutes. Now, you might not be busy those full 2 minutes, but you're still aware of the animal out there. But for sure, from 0 to probably 15, you're fully engaged on what's going on, because eight of those 15 seconds is during the ride, and then there's probably at least another 7-8 seconds that you're going to have to probably work a little bit to make sure the bull rider's out, your partner's in good shape, and maybe even the bull's leaving the arena. So that's a lot. It's kind of like spotting and stalking. You see it, and then you pursue it, and you go about it, and you've been in the hills before. If you just sit there and think about it too long, you miss your opportunity.
Yeah, totally.
Same with fighting bulls. If bull rider gets bucked off and I go, man, I should probably shoot that gap, the gap's already closed.
Yeah.
It's the reaction to what was given to me.
Yeah, I've waited way too long on the mountain before and then missed my shots.
Yeah, you get there, you're like, man, but if he doesn't,
And so often, I sit here and he's gonna come this way, or I could sit there and he's gonna come this way, and I always choose the wrong one. But no, but it's so many correlations, and I love how you weave in God into all this, and there's a physical preparation we've talked about, and such, and then the spiritual. You've always kind of aligned that. What does your spiritual preparation look like? What do you do on a routine basis that keeps you spiritually strong and ready to react to the world or to temptation or to whatever it is that comes your way?
I think for me, like, I start every morning before my feet hit the ground. I whether it's a verse or a full chapter or a full devotional, just try to plug into something God's trying to tell me or in His Word. As well as 2 or 3 times a week, we've got some small groups, some men groups. Basically, we do Zoom, as well as just constantly thinking about it. Throughout the day, it's like building a relationship with your family. The more you're around them, the more you get to know them and are comfortable around them or trust them or any of that. So for me, it's just staying plugged in. Trying to stay plugged more to the source than the system. And the more that I can do that I have more of a peace about whatever life throws me. Now, that doesn't mean that it's comfortable all the time, but I've also always said that what good is faith if it's never tested? Yeah. So if you're going through the valley, know that you got to be able to take some good out of that, physically or mentally or spiritually. And if you don't have that mindset, then you're kind of losing out on something that you can gain through it. How many times in the Bible did you see somebody just walk through life and everything was perfect? If Jesus had it rough, then what makes us think that we're going to have such a smooth sailing? But the testing of our faith produces that endurance for us. It tells us in James 1. So be joyful in those situations that there's a reason behind this, and I'm going to get stronger and grow from it. It's no different than going to the gym. If you start going to the gym from day 1 to day 365, there's going to be a lot of growth, a lot of strength, and a lot of motivation, and a lot of different areas where you got better in. But if you just go day 1 and then go miss all the other days and go the last day of the year, you're not going to accomplish much. You know, it's getting outside of your comfort zone, physically and spiritually, of being willing to do what others won't, so you can do what others can't, type thing.
That's powerful, man. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, our number one core value here at Mountain Ops is recognizing God, and I love that He's so recognized in your journey by you, and then as people understand your story, it's easy to see that God's been involved in the decisions you've made and guiding you to what you're called to do in life. And I think it's amazing that what you're called to do is to protect people and to save lives.
Well, we were made to be more than conquerors, you know, and just like you guys, this is conquer the mountain. Yeah. You know, there's a physical mountain, but you know, the mountain can be anything in life.
Metaphorically, there's so many mountains.
There's so many mountains in life, and conquer it. You know, you can get to the top. There's a top up there, but are you willing to go through what it takes to get there? And like Cameron said when I did his deal, he said you don't need much. You need a mountain and a rock, and you can get a lot done. And he's like, you know what? You know, making lemonade or lemons out of lemonade. Yeah. You know, it's kind of mentality.
That's cool, man. That's awesome. Now, we talked a little bit earlier too. I asked you what your favorite products were. Maybe give me a little the group a little recap on that, and then what product you used before you go into the arena.
Yeah, so I've been with y'all for probably a year and a half now, and I've always been one that wants to use some stuff before I really. Yeah. You know, I want to feel
and you
a
found
difference.
It first through
Del Brisby, old DB himself, old son, you know, super puncher. That could be a whole
greatest cowboy, right?
That could be a whole nother podcast.
That's how he started my podcast. It's like, you know, it's hard to, you know, it's just a little hard sometimes waking up every morning knowing you're the best cowboy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't know either. But yeah, so the products that I take every day is my Immune. Electrolytes. I love the electrolytes. I mean, it's just a great boost to energy pre or post workout. My fish oils, my slumber, and see those four. What else do I take?
Yeah, the protein that you.
Oh yeah. You guys come out with the peanut butter banana with old Rich Froning, the one of the greatest CrossFitters of all times. I'm a huge peanut butter fan, and when I seen you guys come out with the peanut butter banana, I love banana pudding. Banana pudding is my all-time favorite. That's awesome. So it was like the mesh of the best worlds. Wow. So that's my favorite protein. Probably followed up real close, probably the cookies and cream, and then. I'm not big on pre-workout stuff like before I go run or go to the gym, but what I do take pretty much every performance now, I take a shot of one of the Ignites. And the one that I was just taking was the cream soda one. Yeah. I really haven't, honestly, I haven't found one of those I don't like. There's just the Tiger's good, Blood is really good. The Bull Rush hooked me when it was a seasonal with the name, but it's the raspberry, and it was they sent me some of it last fall actually, and I was taking that, and so yeah, that's my go-to to get me. And anybody that's not in the same mindset of I don't take that because it gets you jittery, and it doesn't. For me, honestly, it kind of clears my mind. It feels like, but it helps get my blood pumping and get a good little warm-up sweat going on before I step into that arena, and then I don't have any big crash right after. I just kind of level back out and you know, go do my deal, but then top it off with a good dose of slumber, whether the gummies or the powder. I actually got a good little testimony. I was talking to one of my good friends yesterday driving over here, and I was telling him I was going to come and meet with y'all and do a little podcast, and he's been using my code for like a year now, but he said, hey man, you don't gotta say my name or anything, but I'm going to. He said that slumber, he said you know, he works probably 200 performances a year, so basically all year long he's driving or flying, and he said that puts me to sleep, and he says I wake up with such a clear mind, and so kudos to you guys on the slumber. Like he loves it. Like he's really big about the slumber. So I said, you dang right, it's Matt Merritt. I'm going to shout you out. He's one of the best rodeo clowns, entertainers going to right now. And
what was his name?
Matt Merritt.
Matt Merritt.
Yeah, awesome. Look him up. And he's a good friend of mine. We work a lot of rodeos together. Cool. But yeah, he is a big time on the slumber.
Well, it's amazing what a good night's sleep can do for you in life, physically, spiritually. You know, like we need rest.
Yeah.
You know, and if your mind's like me, if you're a listener who has a hard time, you know, turning your mind off, then that's been game changer for me as well. But I can only imagine being on the road that much, and you're in different beds, and you know just
well, and it's hard to get your ample amount of sleep each night. So when you do lay down, you want to be able to go to sleep. Yeah. And I've got a testimony on it actually as well. Last year, almost a year ago, Jake at the time sent me some slumber, I think, for the first time. Well, I ended up breaking my ribs that one night. And I don't know if you've ever broke ribs, but they're just uncomfortable. It's hard to sleep. It's hard to get comfortable. And I kind of gave me a double shot of the caramel one, I believe it was.
Yeah, the salted caramel.
The salted caramel, and I slept good that night. It honestly helped get me through the next couple of weeks, because it would knock me out enough where I could actually sleep and not worry about the pain. So, yeah, I do really like that. And like I said, on the road for us, it capitalizes so much, because, you know, we might have times where we can get the 7-8 hours, but it might be 3 or 4, or you're in a truck trying to sleep. And it definitely does, you know, put you to sleep, and you wake up clear mind, ready to go.
We need to get the whole rodeo industry on that slumber. I mean,
well,
it's
actually,
people on the move, right?
At the finals last year, you know, Courtney sent me a bunch of product in that. I did some different Q&A stuff when I was out doing my autograph stuff and promo stuff, and so I was giving, you know, ignites or electrolytes or the performance bars out. And it's funny because, you know, every night we're all at the arena together, and a bunch of the barrack riders, bronc riders, bull riders, they were coming in and getting the ignite, or some took the slumber. The slumber wasn't as big of a hit during that time, but they loved the electrolytes, the ignite, and the performance bars. I mean, they were all about it. So
that's awesome.
that was good to see, and not just that they wanted something free, but they come back and like, hey, no, that was really good. That helped me, and that's again why I've stuck with the product, and I've felt the benefits that it's helped sustain. You know, me being able to do what I need to do at a high level. So I appreciate you guys for helping us out.
We appreciate you helping us get the word out there, especially into an industry. Obviously, so much crossover. The rodeo people are hunting people. Hunting people are rodeo people. There's so much crossover, but there you know, you have a voice that we don't into that space. And whether you recognize this or not, like your influence in pointing people to us, it helps them with a product that hopefully is going to benefit their life. We're very confident that it will. But also, anytime somebody uses your code, purchases, we donate a meal to a child or a family in need. And we're at about the 7.4 million meals having been donated.
That's awesome.
And it doesn't happen if we don't have guys like you that are, you have a platform and you're using it for good, and you're shining a light on all the good you're doing there, but also on brands that you're partnered with that are trying to do more than make money. I mean, MTN Ops is, yes, we need to drive revenue. We need to build the business. We need to grow it. And by so doing that, we get to help more people. Because we're not just padding our pockets. We are a company that is truly recognizing God and recognizing that God has children that need other children to help. And so we appreciate the influence you have on building that. We had a speaker at an event a couple weeks ago, and he said, I want somebody to call their shot. Like, what is it that you're gonna say? I'm gonna do this by this date, you know. And he was calling people out of the audience, and I just sat there and I had this burning in my heart, like I know what my shot is, but I'm gonna wait till he's done. I'm gonna get up there and tell the team, like, here's our shot. So I got up there and I looked at the team and I said, look, I'm gonna put something out there, but it's going to require all of us to really go after this shot. And I said 10 million meals by the end of 2026. And so we're at 7.4. We've got a pretty good jump in a year and a half. We've never done that much, but everyone was like, just like on their feet. Yes, we're going to do it. So we need partners to help us. 10 million by 26. Like, that's what we're going to do. And what that means is there are going to be a lot of people taking the product, sleeping better, having a better smooth energy, you know, no jitters, that type of thing. Hopefully losing weight, gaining strength, whatever they need help with. And then in return, like, we're going to feed, you know, we're going to donate that, up to that 10 million meals, multiplying our loaves and fishes, you know, and that's how it all starts.
That's awesome.
And so appreciate you being a support for our team and for the company and driving awareness for us, because that at the heart and soul of what we're about, it's that.
And I think that's the other tie that really helped draw me to, not only just Dell, talking highly of y'all and then starting to get into the products and seeing what it does for me, but just that giving and then lending the hand, and like I said, patriotic, God-fearing, gun-loving, outdoors, hard-working mentality, rural people. That's just everything that I'm about and what I'm, the rodeo world is about. And like I said, you guys are doing it, and I'm just glad to ride the wave with you.
Oh, thanks, brother. Appreciate that. I've got one final question to ask before we wrap up, but is there anything that I've missed?
No, I don't
anything
think so.
That's on your heart that you're like, I need to share this?
Yeah, no, I think we're crossed a lot of T's.
This has been fun. I've got so many questions about rodeos, but I probably I want to come just to an event and watch you do your thing, and then we'll do another follow up, and I'll be like, hey, what were you doing? What was thinking?
Yeah.
What was going on in this moment? We read a book here at MTN Ops. We have a little book club that we do, and we've read different books, business leadership, service oriented, growth mindset type books. One of them, the title is How Will You Measure Your Life? It's a book I love. We've read it multiple times, and so that's my question to you as a conqueror in life, Dusty. How will you measure your life when all is said and done?
I feel just the impact. I think that I I come from a sport that gave me everything I have. Am I giving back that much or more? That's there's a lot of different angles you can go off that, but I think truly, when I look back and reflect on my career, did I give everything that I had, and did I give the right people, or the people that I come across, the right opportunity to be able to chase their goals so they could potentially be in my position, whether in the rodeo world or somewhere else in life, and that's what I think I'll measure it on. It's not really necessarily what I've been a part of or what I did, but the influence that I had behind it all, and what was my purpose driven behind it.
That's cool. That's awesome. Well, I love it all. I love the whole story from beginning to end, and all that you're doing. And I especially love and appreciate that you recognize God in so many incredible ways and His influence in your life, and no wonder you're being blessed because I know that God loves to bless His children, especially those that will recognize Him and appreciate all that He's blessed you with. So thank you for being that. Thank you for demonstrating what it is to be a conqueror. Everyone go follow Dusty. I think is it just Dusty Tuckness on?
Yeah, Dusty_Tuckness on Instagram, and I think it's just Dusty Tuckness on Facebook.
Okay, very
cool.
I
don't even know my own handles.
No, it's fun to watch. I mean, I could watch reels of you, fighting bulls, and it's just such a fascinating industry and sport and career that you're a part of. So check them out, and everyone please subscribe, comment, share this with others. And then we'll pick a product the week that Dusty's podcast launches. We'll pick maybe a couple of your favorite products and do a giveaway with it at the time. Does that sound all right?
That works for me.
Okay. All right, everyone. Take care. Keep conquering.
Let's go.